Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about programming skills. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what are the most beneficial programming skills according to you? Well, being able to write code, that's probably number one right there. That's pretty important. Being able to use version control, that's also pretty high up there. Math, that's also good, a little bit at the very least. So if I'm gonna make an attempt to talk about programming skills, like if we're not gonna talk about, like, because this is gonna be a really boring video if we're just gonna say these obvious things, like, well, if you, as I've said in many videos before, guys, go to the job postings, most of them are posting what tools you need and like what they're looking for and so forth and so forth, and I know that is far from enough to be able to say, hey, now I know that I have all the most relevant skills. And so that's what I'm going to try to make this video about. I'm going to see if I can make it a little bit more nuanced and give you some ideas of skills that I know have at the very least been very useful to me, and things that I have seen be very useful to other people. It may not be as obvious as knowing a testing framework or knowing how to, as I was saying, like spin up like a server in a programming language or something like that, right? So one of the first things that I would say is most beneficial as a programmer is that you need to have the ability to think independently, and you need to have the ability to solve your own problems. Now, the reason why I say this is because one thing that is a little bit underestimated sometimes, I think, in quite a lot of organizations, is how much, depending on the organization now and the people working in the organization, how much autonomy is required for an individual to have, and how independent they have to be in order to even be able to work in that environment. So I have on many occasions stated that in some companies they only have the option of hiring senior software developers because there's no documentation, none of the people working there has an interest in helping out, and like they're not good or maybe they're just not good teachers and so forth, or maybe they themselves don't really know. Everything is sort of wishy-washy, and nobody really knows what's going on. They don't have a holistic picture of the whole thing, right? And as you can imagine, if you put a senior software developer in that sort of situation, even as a senior level, it might be tricky, but you have enough experience to maybe reverse engineer some stuff and figure some stuff out by yourself. That becomes increasingly harder the more inexperienced the person that is in the environment is. So for a junior developer, that's pretty tough. But you don't have to be in such an extreme situation. When you go to school or you do studying or anything like that, it's very common that you will, I promise you, because it's still happening to me even today, you will get stuck and you will have questions. And the quicker you learn how to go on like the internet or use AI or something like that to just help you get an angle on how to solve your problem, the happier and more well off you are going to be. Because even though you might be lucky and have some coworkers who are really nice and answers the questions that you have and things like that, there's only to a certain degree where you can leverage that, because if you ask every 5 minutes, people are going to start to get a little bit annoyed with you, and if you never get anything done because without someone else teaching you how to do it, then you're stuck, right? Then people are going to start having concerns about your ability to actually do the programming thing. Now, you and me, we both know, of course, that it can be a little bit intimidating when you're doing things for the first time, and we both know that we have various types of people in every organization. So in one company, as I like to say, there might be a company where everybody thinks that you're the slowest person there, or you're really unproductive and so forth and so forth, and that has not necessarily anything to do with the fact that you are that sort of person or at that level objectively. It's just their perception of you. In another company, it might be different. You might find that here people are more forgiving or have a more positive attitude, because it's basically down to the people that you have around you. So how good you are is a balancing act between hard concrete skills that you see a pattern in and how people perceive you, and the context that you find yourself in. And because you don't know, you can never know when you hire like a new person or you join a new company or anything like that, how they're going to fit into the environment. One of the first things that is really good for you to know is how to get good at Googling things, how to get good at using AI in order to help you along and sort of figure out something you don't understand. I would say that it is probably the first and foremost thing that you should have, and it's probably, I would say, universally one of the best skills that you can have in modern society at the very least. Now, apart from that, and when it comes to programming, the next thing that is extremely useful is to be very good at divide and conquer and to simplify your problems until you can make headway. Now, the reason why I say that is because one of the things that you're going to find very early on if you join any of the larger projects in the world is that there's a lot of code. And there's more code than you probably have ever touched in any tutorial you've ever done. And not all of it is going to be great, and not all of it is going to be working, or so forth and so forth. And then you get the tasks such as a common first week type of task where they might want you to add something somewhere, or they might ask you to fix a bug or something. And now you have to traverse that enormous amount of code that has been written in order to figure out where the problem is or where you're going to put your feature and things like that. And here I've always found that when you get overwhelmed and there are too many concepts going on at the same time, the first and foremost thing that I try to do at the very least is to simplify my problems so that I can start to understand pieces of the problem. Because if I'm trying to understand the whole system at once, that's going to be too difficult for me. So what I try to do instead is to see, all right, let's say for the sake of argument, I'm going to add a UI component or something like that. And then I start my server and I try to go to the page, and the first thing I do is not to just start working on the thing that I'm supposed to do. The first thing I try to do is to get a hello world piece of text onto the page where I know that my component that I'm going to add, that's where it's going to go, right? Just so I understand how to get it there. And if that goes well, then I scale up my solution. Okay, now I'm trying to get something that looks more like the thing that I'm supposed to be doing and see if I can get some functionality in there. So I sort of iteratively increase the complexity of my solution. So I try to start with the simplest thing and then I work my way upwards until it gets more and more advanced, until the whole feature is done, right? It's the same thing when I deal with bugs. If you have a bug and you're not really sure where it is, then the best thing for you is to try to figure out, okay, so this is where, like, after this point the problem has occurred. Let's go backwards and see if I can find roughly at what point in whatever I'm doing the problem starts. And then you try to zone in, you like to call it, it's basically binary searching. You try to zone in where in the code that specific problem is, because as I said, there is no way to understand the whole system when you first start out. It takes a long time, and even really large systems, no one's going to know all the code. So being able to sort of put that out of your head for a moment and just focus on the area that is in focus for whatever you're doing, that is a very powerful skill. Because if you feel overwhelmed and you're trying to take in this whole gigantic system and sort of get to a point where you feel comfortable with the whole system before you can make meaningful changes to the code, you're never going to do it. It's going to be too much. And so that's why I'm trying to tell you to sort of compartmentalize a little bit and like try to figure out where the area where you need to do something is, and then try to just focus on that area and see, and sort of, as I said, start with something simple and add more complexity as you go along, and don't just sit there and try to build the whole thing in one go. Like, try to like test your way forward, a little bit like the scientific method. Make something, observe how that fits, something simple, and then if you see that works, okay, try it again and add something more, and then add something more, and so forth and so forth. And by doing that, you're going to be a lot more capable at dealing with things like testing, because testing is basically that. Testing is really down to being able to structure your code in such a way that each piece of the code can be tested effectively. And if you don't have a good strategy for how to make small adjustments and small iterations on your code, it can be tricky for you to write effective tests. So what I want you to take away from this is that there are quite a lot of things that would be beneficial to you, and I would just start to say, like, first, top of the list is of course all the tools that you need in order to actually do the job. That's number one. Number two is to get really good at talking to AIs or doing Googling skills or being a really nice person that asks for help when you need it without going too often, and like sort of respecting people and being a good student, as I like to call it. And the reason for that is very simply that the more experience you get, and depending on company, in some cases you are around a lot of very nice people who will help you all the time, and in some cases you're completely alone, it's just you, and you have nobody else to ask, and you have to figure it out basically, because it's, well, more or less the job of a software developer is to figure it out, whatever it might be in many cases. It's not always that clean cut and that black and white, but for most of us, especially me in my days now, like I don't really have, I can ask for some things if there's something very specific to the company, but I mean when it's coding related and stuff like that, most people expect me to be able to figure it out even if I've never done it before. And the second thing is learn how to focus on something small, like simplify your problems as much as possible, because when you get overwhelmed, you have too much things going on at the same time, the easiest thing for you to do is to just try to understand what are you supposed to be doing right now, what is the bug, or what is the feature, like that specific thing. Don't try to understand the whole code base immediately. Start by just focusing on that small part, because if you can ship one small thing, you will learn something from it, and then you ship another small thing, and then you learn from that as well. And before you know it, you've done this for 10 years and shipped so many small things that you start to immediately, almost like a sixth sense, know how the whole system is built. And that is a better approach for you, I argue. It's going to help you debug code faster, because you're trying to just zone in on the thing where the issue is. It's going to help you deliver stuff faster, because if you can make something simple, make that shippable, and then add complexity as you go along, you are more likely to find mistakes or oversights in your implementation than if you wait too long with checking out that it's actually working and testing it and stuff like that. And it's going to help you with unit testing and all of this sort of stuff, because the way you write your code is going to affect how well you are able to write tests on top of that. That would be the two that I have right now, at the very least. I might have more in another video, but these are the two for this one. Have a great day.